Hey, good morning / afternoon, and welcome to our Super Bowl preview. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles live from New Orleans. It is the FTN Fantasy Schatz and Tanier NFL podcast, brought to you as always by Underdog Fantasy, which you can play even for the Super Bowl by just picking over or under on your favorite players. Underdog Fantasy, use code FTN to get a match up to $1,000. We are live in New Orleans. Yes, Mike is a little shadowed on the road. That is true. I am at the media center right now in a room that hopefully nobody needs to use for the next half hour. And Mike is at our hotel.
Yes. And I'm backlit from four directions. I don't know how that's physically possible, but no matter which way I turn, I believe I'm backlit.
I mean, it's a little cloudy, but it's nice to be down here in New Orleans. Obviously, we are more from cold climates. So we are enjoying the warmth of the 70-degree temperatures. Mike is outside as we speak. And of course, we do this live, so we'll take your questions and comments. If you want to ask any questions about this big Super Bowl matchup or what things are like here in New Orleans, we had a good time. We went out to see some music last night at the Spotted Cat on Fisherman Street. Frenchman Street, that I think is called Fisherman Street, but it's actually called Frenchman Street. Yes.
Frenchman Street. We saw great bands there. We saw an unbelievable band at the media party called The Rumble.
Yes, if you like New Orleans jazz funk type bands, you have to look up The Rumble. They were incredible. And I don't even think listening to them recorded would get through just how exciting they were live. It was the highlight of any media party that I've been to in 6 Super Bowls.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. They're phenomenal. They toured this area. They don't think they leave this area. Check them out on Spotify, though.
Michael Allen Brewer says that Tanier needs to be wearing more powdered sugar. He has done Cafe Du Monde. I have not done Cafe Du Monde yet. I'm planning to do Cafe Du Monde on my own tomorrow after Mike goes home.
Yes, and you have to do it. Doug Farrar and I got there earlier. I also got a bunch of beignets in Mobile last week, so I think I'm going to be on a strict beignet count probably for the rest of the year. Luckily, they're hard to get in Philly.
We're talking about this game. We were talking a little bit before we came on the air here. There is a little bit of a sense of tiredness because of the fact that the Chiefs have been here so many times over the last few years. Certainly from a reporting perspective, we talk to the same players year after year after year. The Eagles were just here 2 years ago.
Yep.
I think one of the reasons there's so much interest in Saquon Barkley is not just that he had such a great year, but that he's a fresh face for the Super Bowl that we didn't talk to 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's it. He's the news story. I think, the New York media is also following him around as they kind of grind the poor Giants into the ground about what I didn't think was a terrible decision, like in a vacuum by the Giants themselves. But yeah, there's Saquon. There's Zach Bond, which I think he's been mobbed every time he's had an availability. But otherwise, it's really hard to generate a new story, a fresh perspective about this game, particularly on the Chiefs side, where you can only talk about three-peats and legacies so much. And the players don't want to hear that. The players don't want to be in the mindset where they're thinking of destiny. They're thinking about their assignments. So you wind up with us kind of like talking to each other about this, which isn't that compelling.
Camden Cap says, I wonder where you put Joe Thuney if you are the Chiefs. I get that him moving to left tackle has helped the last couple of weeks, but to me, the Eagles' strength is inside. Don't give Jalen Carter easy wins. I can't remember the name of the kid who's playing left guard, but he hasn't been that bad. Their weakness on the line is the right tackle, Juwan Taylor. He had 62 pressures allowed by FTN data charting.
Oh, my God.
And that's why for a piece that ESPN, I don't think has run yet, but is coming, they asked me to pick X factors for each team, and I picked Nolan Smith as my Philadelphia X factor because he goes up against Taylor. And thank you, ATX Ryan, for reminding us the left guard is named Caliendo. That is Kansas City's left guard with Thuney at left tackle.
Caliendo sounds like he knows his way around the muffaletta, but I'll tell you what, I think the plan is Thuney's going to be at left tackle. I don't think there's been any question that's how they're going to do it. Nolan Smith is a great X factor. He's played well in the second half of the season. Eagles may have Brandon Graham back as well, and that's important when they're trying to do these rotations off the edge, where you can have Sweat, you can have Graham, you can have Nolan Smith, you can have everybody out there contributing and putting pressure on those tackles.
You cannot have Bryce Huff. I think one of the most interesting things about the Eagles is that they went out and they signed Bryce Huff to this big contract, and then Vic Fangio just felt like he's just too dimensional, and he's played 15 snaps in the playoffs in 3 games, just not playing at all.
I almost forgot he existed. I was actually trying to remember who's the other guy. It's Huff. When you talk about the Eagles offseason, it was tremendous. Barkley and Bond. But, you hit a couple home runs. That was a very big strikeout, very big, expensive strikeout for the Eagles. Luckily, it has not impacted them much.
And a reminder, by the way, if you are not on Mike's Substack, you need to be reading Mike's Substack. Today was the 1-year anniversary of the 2 Deep Zone, miketanier.substack.com. And there is a great story today about that historic New Orleans sandwich, the muffaletta. You definitely need to go and read that, especially if you like olives.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be bringing and eating half of the muffaletta to the media center soon, Aaron. So you'll vicariously get to enjoy it as I do.
Camden Cap says, I predict the Chiefs will run a rugby lateral. Someone said to me something about, do you think there are going to be any weird plays, trick plays in this game? And I say, yeah, because if we're all going on the theory that the Chiefs have held things in until the final game, then surely one of the things they've held in is trick play of some sort. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see one. Plus, if they have to sneak, I don't know if that counts as a trick play, but obviously they don't use Mahomes. They use like Noah Gray or something.
Yeah, they use Noah Gray. They might use things like T formations and stuff. The lateral is a good one, and that could just be Kelsey improvising. I wonder, I don't know what the prop is. If there's a prop on a lateral, why not? Yeah,
because typically the prop is how many players will throw a pass over and under 2.5, but that lateral doesn't count as the pass.
Right.
Sean Ryder wants to know, Mike, where did you get the muffaletta from? Tell us a little bit of the muffaletta story before we get further into the game.
We're just stuck on muffaletta now. I went to Central Grocery, which is the birthplace of the muffaletta mecca, so to speak. And I got to speak to the grandson of Salvatore, I forget his last name, Lupa, I believe, who was the creator of the muffaletta. Now, if you go anywhere in New Orleans, you will find muffaletta on the menu. This is like going for Philly people to Pat's or Gino's and trying to get the authentic. It was absolutely phenomenal. They do a brisk business there. And just as a warning, if you get a whole muffaletta, A, it's expensive, and B, that is meant to be about 2 people's worth of meal. It's on an entire loaf of Italian bread, so to speak. So my eyes were bigger than my stomach, but it is a phenomenal sandwich. Obviously, Aaron and I have been enjoying the gumbo, the jambalaya. I had a po' boy last night as well. If you like Italian meats, and if you like olives, the olives are very controversial right now on my Blue Sky feed. If you like olives, you got to like olives. Come down, get what my neighbor told me on a text as he wants to try the Mustafa sandwich.
I will say, I put this out as a post last night. As far as I'm concerned, they can have the Super Bowl here every year. Of the 5 cities that I've done Super Bowls in, this is definitely the most enjoyable because of the combination of the food, the weather, and the music.
Food, weather, people, music, and those of us, when you're doing team availabilities and you can walk to them or take a $3 Uber to them if your feet are tired, as opposed to going on shuttles and going 45 minutes in one direction. And folks, if you read your local beat writers, and if they sound like they're able to do more, it's because they can do more because they're not shuttling for 2 hours a day. They're going to availability. They can get back to their hotel or their workroom in like 15 minutes and work. And that's a big deal for us.
Yeah, we'll see if they fix things in Santa Clara next year. But a lot of us have been talking about the difficulty of the first Santa Clara Super Bowl because so much time was spent on shuttle buses instead of working.
Yes, and that's exactly it. And it can be difficult, especially if an outlet sends one person and says, go cover the Super Bowl. That person doesn't have a chance because that person will be covering the inside of a shuttle for like the entire week and maybe get like 3 quotes.
All right. Camden Caps wants to know, do we think the Chiefs can keep Saquon from his 50-yard touchdowns and actually make Jalen Hurts beat Spagnuolo on 3rd down? This is, as far as I'm concerned, the heart of this game.
Yeah.
Because I think not only does a lot of the Eagles' offense depend on the Saquon Barkley explosives. I mean, I don't want to get too much into psychology, but I do feel like a lot of their sort of self image depends on the Saquon Barkley explosives. And the Kansas City Chiefs were number 2 in the league at preventing second-level yards and number 2 in the league at preventing open field yards. And while they did have some problems with the Bills 2 weeks ago, I feel like they should be able to keep Barkley to maybe like one explosive, and that really changes what the Eagles want to do.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's kind of like, well, what if Barkley gets one explosive, and then that's 6 Eagles points, and they have to generate some more points? What happens? I feel confident that the Eagles' passing game, particularly in the playoffs, has added a new dimension or refound the dimension. I think part of that was Dallas Goedert coming back. I think the Eagles did save some things in terms of what they can do or like to do in the short game for the playoffs that they weren't necessarily showing in the second half of the season. So I'm not on this team. Jalen Hurts can't get it done, which seems to have like bubbled up in the last couple of months. And certainly 2 years ago, there was no question about Jalen Hurts being able to get it done or not get it done, and when throwing the ball downfield. But you're right. I think the Eagles both want explosive plays and be able to get the 6 and 7 yard chunks. I think the Chiefs allow the 5, 6, 7 yard chunks pretty frequently. It's the explosive plays that the Eagles going to have a hard time generating.
A lot of the stats you'll hear today are obviously in the DVOA preview that I put up at FTN Fantasy yesterday. I don't think it's that Hurts can't get it done. It's just that he's less likely to get it done than Mahomes. I mean, the fact is everybody's preview of this game, I just read Bill Barnwell's preview, and he says the same thing a lot of us are saying, which is at the end of the day, you just kind of trust that Mahomes will have the ball and Mahomes will do Mahomes thing. And we're all just kind of writing off the fact that if Mahomes was not the name of the person in this game and you looked at the season stats for these two teams, you'd be like, it's close, but I favor the Eagles. But everybody is like, I mean, in the end of the day, who wants to pick against Mahomes?
Right. And I don't think that's unreasonable. I think, you say, well, it's like magic or it's, vibes or it's hoodoo or whatever. It's the things that are beyond our quantifiable measurement that we know are there. Whether it's some combination of coaching, experience, anything like that, Mahomes has it. Now you say, how many points is that worth? And I think for a lot of us, we say, maybe it's worth 3 points, maybe it's worth 4 points. Don't think it's worth 7 points in this game, but I don't think it's worth nothing.
Bill Houston says, is the Eagles' interior offensive line healthy? You do not want backups going up against Chris Jones. This was definitely a reason why I favored the Chiefs when I first thought about this game last week, but Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens have been okayed. They are both playing in this game. So that is definitely something that is good for the Eagles.
Yes, and they were listed in the pool report as full participants in practice, whereas there were some people who were limited participants. So full participants seems to suggest they're at full strength. On Monday, it didn't look or sound like that was going to be the case. When we were at media night, it looked and sounded like they were kind of swirling in the other direction of that. But now it looks like both of them will play. And yes, absolutely a huge factor.
Hitchhiker's Pie says we have 2 years ago's history when the Eagles were a better team then, played really well, and still lost. I don't know if they were a better team then. They were a better offense. But this defense is really, really good. I've talked a lot about this. The people talk about the fact that Mahomes is 8-0 against Vic Fangio, but this is a way better defense than Fangio has had going up against Mahomes in the past. I will also point out these two teams played last year, and the Eagles won that game, I believe, in Kansas City.
Yes.
And we've talked a lot about the question of whether Hurts can beat the blitz. In the fourth quarter of that game, they blitzed Hurts, and it got picked up, and he hit Devontae Smith for 41 yards, which had Mike Edwards in coverage, and Mike Edwards is no longer on the Chiefs, but showed that they can identify Spagnuolo blitzes. They can block them, and Hurts can hit the outside shot downfield, and that is what led to the touchdown that won the game for the Eagles last year. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's not something you want to write off as impossible.
Right. We've seen proof of concept of just about every scenario in this. Like there have been in the last 2 years proof of concept of these teams doing different things against each other. I'll say this about the Eagles defense and this Eagles team. This is the best Eagles team I've ever seen. You're talking about a 54-year-old man who saw the Dick Vermeil teams. And
you really feel they're better than 2004? Because 2004, until those last couple of games where they sat starters, was just phenomenal.
That game was amazing. I think at this point in the year, they're better. If you ask me, obviously at week 6, I've been like, whatever. At this point of the year, more balanced, better running game, even better in the secondary than that team, in my opinion, and better balanced overall. So that's where I come on this. Certainly, I think this is better than 2 years ago, where that secondary started to fall apart late in the game and couldn't get a stop against Mahomes.
I'll point out that from week 7 through the playoffs, if you took the defensive DVOA from week 7 through the playoffs, that would be one of the top 10 defenses of all time.
Wow.
Yeah, they've been so good on defense since week 7. The first 5 games, right? Week 5 was their bye week. The first 5 games, the defense was kind of meh, and then they just turned it on. And if you look at the week-to-week graph that I have in the preview, it's like from weeks 8 on, it's just they're all the games are good.
Right. And you can say, well, why is that the case? And all the reasons why that's the case makes sense. Because Fangio's defense gelled, they finally figured things out. Because the rookies in the secondary got their sea legs about them, etc. Because Nolan Smith started to figure things out. The only injury loss is Nakobe Dean, which I think is a manageable injury loss. There's reasons to think that defense that we've been seeing for weeks and weeks is legit.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Sheehan says, by my own metric, the 2022 Eagles were better than this version.
Okay.
I mean, by my own metric, the 2022 Chiefs were better than this version. But we're all saying, but the Chiefs in the playoffs, but the Chiefs in the playoffs. And I will say, if you go back and look at the last 7 years, the Chiefs are about 20 percentage points of DVOA higher in the playoffs than they are in the regular season.
Wow.
Is that real, or is that just that they flipped heads 7 years in a row? I honestly do not know the answer to that question. We all are talking about it as if it's real. We want to believe that it's real. Perhaps it's some mixture of being real and being luck, but like they are better in the playoffs. They just are.
Yeah, it's a trick coin that's 60-40, but it's still what's head 7 times in a row, which still would be against the probabilities normally.
Yeah. Michael Allen Brewer says, quality of opponent. I don't get quite the question. Michael will have to be a little bit more specific about his what.
Right,
what
and of course, everything you do is opponent adjustment. So everything you're saying is opponent adjusted.
Right. I don't remember whether they particularly. I've talked about that the Eagles played a very easy schedule on offense this year, but the defense did not play an easy schedule. The defense is absolutely for real. It's not an opponent adjustment thing or anything.
Right.
And right, Nick Sheehan is saying we'll always have the week 18 asterisk for Kansas City. Yes, I was talking to someone from Denver yesterday, and he was like, when he gives Denver stats for this year, he just takes week 18 out. And Philadelphia also, they were better in week 18 than the Chiefs were, but they also didn't play their starters.
Right.
They also didn't play their starters in week 18.
Right. Right. And you do your best to adjust for that when you do your metrics.
Right. One of the interesting stats we've noticed and we put out on social media, Jalen Hurts has struggled against cover 3. Now, normally when you see these kind of matchup stats like that, they're 1 year blips, right? Because how much cover 3 do you face in 1 year?
Right.
But he has been much worse against cover 3 for 3 straight years. And yet the team that plays the least amount of cover 3 in the league is the Chiefs. Right. And last year when they faced Hurts, they didn't play cover 3 a single time.
Wow. Right. And a defense can't suddenly morph and do what it doesn't like to do. You don't want Spags saying, hey, here's a completely new thing because of a split. He's going to come after him, more man, more blitzing when he can, and play a Chiefs Spags defense.
The Chiefs also, Bill Houston points out, have gotten healthier in the last few weeks, getting Jalen Watson back, Charles Omenihu, Hollywood Brown. This is the healthiest the Chiefs have been all year. That is absolutely true. You want to talk about the luck that the Chiefs have had. Look, nobody wins a championship based on skill. Everybody wins based on a combination of skill and luck. And one of the bits of luck is who's healthiest at the right time. And this team is super healthy right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Charles Omenihu, that's a huge impact player. And so is Hollywood Brown, because they were really struggling to beat man coverage. This was not a team that could beat man coverage early in the year. So much had to be schemed up to get guys open for Mahomes. Hollywood Brown gives you a sort of designated man beater who can get across the middle of the field. I get the impression he's going to be on Cooper DeJean a bunch, although that'll rotate and change based on which side of the field he's on. But he is going to be a big factor for the Chiefs.
Nick Sheehan asks about my thoughts regarding Barkley against good defenses. 75% of Barkley's yards came against bottom 10 defenses. I have written a lot about this, right? That I've written this thing about Barkley having a very, very easy schedule of opposing run defenses this year.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, the games that he played against top 10 run defenses, there weren't a lot of them, but he still had like 100 yards in each of them.
Right.
Like they're not, he didn't have the 200-yard games when he played those teams, but
Right.
he's still, it's not like they kept him to 40 yards, right? Nobody did. Nobody kept. So I think he'll still get yards. It's just, I don't think he's going to get the big explosive runs. And so much of the Eagles offense this year depended on those big explosive runs.
Yeah. And again, I think the Eagles, they're going to have to do more in the quick game. They have to get the ball into the flats a little more. And what we haven't seen a lot of is the downfield shots to A.J. Brown. They had one against the Rams in the snow. Brown couldn't bring it in. I think the opportunities will be there. And I think that they really got a lot out of that in 2022 and 2023. I think there'll have to be some element of that on Sunday.
I'll also point out the Chiefs faced 50 scrambles in the regular season, which was the most of any defense in the league. So when they blitz Hurts, and Hurts struggles with the blitz, there's no question about it. But if he can get out of the pocket and scramble, there are yards to be had there.
Yeah. And Hurts is going to want to go up the middle for the yards. That's where he's more comfortable with. The one thing I think as a tendency that Spags certainly has noticed is Hurts doesn't like his first read. He runs to the right. He will run to the right and look for things to the right. Spags is going to have a solution to that, whether it's somebody spying, whether it's a delayed blitzer, maybe whether it's coming to his face in that direction to make him go to the left. That's something the Chiefs are going to try to look to get a win on.
Yes, Bill Houston points out Leo Chenal as a key player, possibly as a spy on Hurts and a run stopper. He's not a great pass coverage guy, but yes, as a spy or as a run stopper, Leo Chenal is definitely pretty key.
Yeah, and if you want him to cover the pass, it means you might have to throw over the middle once or twice or throw to your backs once or twice, and that's not something the Eagles are necessarily, like to do.
Yeah. I will say my favorite prop in this game would be Travis Kelce under.
Ooh.
On the Travis Kelce under, because the Eagles were third in coverage against tight ends this year. And I think if they do play some 12 personnel, I would think Noah Gray would be more likely to be open than Kelce, and Mahomes is going to find the open man. And I'm betting that the Kelce prop is a little bit juiced because people who are not as knowledgeable want to bet on Kelce because of the Taylor Swift thing. So I like the Kelce under. Okay.
Matt Lombardo was big on the Kelce over. So I'm going to say Kelce neutral. I like your reasoning, but I'm not a big tight end prop guy in the Super Bowl. So.
Michael Allen Brewer says, what about the Kelce under on proposals?
Oh, for heaven's sake.
Brian Knowles pointed out in his prop bet extravaganza that you can get Travis Kelce to propose after a Chiefs win and Taylor Swift to say no.
Okay.
Plus 5,000 if you are not a hopeless romantic.
I kind of like it. Plus 5,000?
Camden Cap says, okay, if they win and he proposes, then it might actually be rigged. Yeah, well. I mean, it did stop Ian Johnson from Boise State after Boise State won the Fiesta Bowl back in the day, and I doubt that was rigged. So,
right, the amount of publicists that would have to be involved in this, I can't imagine they'd be keeping it a secret. This would be, the news report of the ages, and it would be very staged and very choreographed. So,
no, it's interesting because I feel like I was surprised when ESPN came out with the staff picks and only about 65% picked the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Because it feels like everyone you talk to is picking the Chiefs, but nobody is expecting a blowout. We're all expecting yet another close game, but everyone feels like the Chiefs have that little bit of Mahomes and Reed advantage. And in my mind, it's a Spagnuolo.
Yeah.
Not that Vic Fangio isn't a great defensive coordinator, but just the idea that Spagnuolo's specialty of designing blitzes is a particularly strong specialty to have against this Philadelphia offense.
Right, and the fact that he's been doing it for so many years against so many quarterbacks, I get that. That's why I've been, my official advice is to take the Eagles up to 4.5. And if you don't like the juice, and the juice isn't actually that bad, parlay that with like the under, tease the under up to like 52 or 53 and go under that. And we were messing with the thing yesterday, and you could get Eagles plus 4.5 and under like 53.5. You get that like minus 110. That's my official take on it. I got a vibe. I got a vibe that the Eagles are winning. And you've known me for years. And anyone who knows a Philadelphia resident, we don't have vibes that the Eagles are going to win. I have a vibe the Eagles are going to win. I have a vibe this is going to be like the Buccaneers Super Bowl.
Oh, really? Because that's what I don't expect as a blowout.
I have a vibe that Chiefs offensive line will crumble. That'll crumble again. That we're like moving the Caliendos and all these other guys all over the place, and Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith and everybody like that are going to turn it into a Mahomes is using his magic just to stay upright and get anything accomplished. So that's a vibe I have. Now, don't bet your mortgage on that vibe, folks, but that's a vibe I have.
Yeah. Nick Sheehan says, if you listen to the analysis, everyone feels like they have talked themselves into being the Eagles being the best team by far, but the actual picks go the other way. I wouldn't say the Eagles being the best team by far. I will say what I said earlier, which is if you took Mahomes out of the game, if you just blocked out the name Mahomes and you just looked at the performance of the Kansas City quarterback during the season, you would probably favor the Eagles by a little bit in this game. But still, like if you look and you include the playoffs and you take out week 18, the Eagles would be third in DVOA and the Chiefs would be fourth.
Right.
So the Eagles are better, but they're not that much better as long as you take out week 18 and include the playoffs because the Chiefs were so good against the Bills despite the close score.
Right. The Chiefs were so good against the Bills. The Chiefs were really, from about week 12 on, similar to the Chiefs we all know and love. You have to sort of erase a couple of months of the season. Just as for the Eagles, you have to take out the first month as well. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like the Eagles are the best team by far. A lot of the matchups feel like they favor the Eagles. When you start saying, okay, where is, how much protection is Mahomes going to have? That doesn't look great. Who's going to be open for him besides Kelsey on short passes? That doesn't look great for him. A lot of those matchups start to tilt the game in the Eagles' favor if you're being like really X and O analytical about it.
We'll take one other non-game question. Michael Allen Brewer says, how has security been adjusted since the New Year's Eve bombing? The Super Bowl Media Center security is the same as it usually is, except that they told us this morning that starting tomorrow, we are not allowed to bring in outside beverages, which seems like a weird decision to make. In particular, a weird decision to make starting Friday, which is the deadest day of the media center. Now, I have been told by someone that if you go down to Bourbon Street, that there definitely is more security than usual. And in the quarter last night, we noticed a little bit more security than usual. But I don't think it's that much of a change because Super Bowls just generally have security.
Yeah, the security at the media center, I'm not going to talk about that beverage thing anyway. If you go to Bourbon Street, yes, there is an armed presence. There is military there. There's military there. There are copters flying overhead. That's not a typical situation for a Tuesday or Wednesday in Super Bowl week. It's very noticeable. When you went to the team availabilities, we were going through the metal detectors and things like that, which I don't think was the case in past Super Bowls. That's kind of the reality of this. Like you said, it's always extremely tight, even for media who come in with credentials and things like that. It's very tight. I have a funny feeling, Aaron, when you're at the game, you're going to be going through some lines. You're going to go through, we always go through lines for security. You're going to go through some real lines for security based on how fraught situation is right now and how tight security is.
Nick Sheehan wants to know the top 3 DVOA food dishes in New Orleans. The only thing I'll say is that I do agree with Mike, which means that there is a heavy opponent adjustment on the po' boy, that it is not as good as it looks. As far as the sandwiches go, muffaletta definitely would be the better sandwich.
Right. I mean, I think jambalaya is absolutely phenomenal. Those of you who love shrimp,
the gumbo I had last night was great. Seafood
you had
gumbo.
A great gumbo. Shrimp and grits, if you like that, it's elite everywhere around here. I'm not a shrimp and grits guy, but yeah, the po' boy is just a hoagie, but like the bread is harder.
Yeah.
So no, I mean it's fine. No.
So you like the Eagles?
Yeah.
I like the Chiefs, but I'm not going to be surprised if the Eagles do pull this off. I'm not going to be like, oh my God, they pulled this off. Now, I will say this is the sort of script that I've been talking about. I think what everyone's expectations for this game is that the Eagles will take a lead. The Chiefs will have the ball at the end, and Mahomes will lead the touchdown drive, and that will win the game. I think what's more likely is that the Chiefs will have a lead, and it's Hurts who will have the ball at the end.
Okay.
And I think that the Kansas City defense can stop him. But I wouldn't be surprised if he leads the touchdown drive that wins the game.
Here's what I envision. Like 4 minutes left, Eagles up by 3, Eagles have the ball. Now, can they melt the clock?
Yes.
And can they melt the clock and secure a touchdown or a field goal or be forced to punt? And if they do a field goal and they're up by 6, are they up to 6 with 7 seconds left or 14 seconds left or a minute left? If it's a minute left, they lose.
Yeah, and Nick Sheehan points out that my idea did not go well for Josh Allen 2 weeks ago, and that is part of what I have in my mind. Is the idea of that it's not that Mahomes will ice the game,
right?
But it's that Spagnuolo and Chris Jones and Michael Dana and Omenahu, Karlaftis, that they will ice the game.
Yeah, and you just saw Josh Allen on 4th and 5 have to roll like crazy to his right against the blitz and throw the ball up for grabs, which is the kind of thing Jalen Hurts could do on a 4th and 5 if stuck in that situation.
Yeah. Bill Houston wants to know, can the Chiefs get anything going with the running game? Now, the Chiefs have the opposite running game of the Eagles, which is that they have very few explosive runs, but a lot of a good success rate, a lot of 4 and 5 and 6 yard runs for Pacheco and Hunt. And I think the Eagles have a good run defense, but I do think that the Chiefs will get some of those 4 and 5 and 6 yard runs that'll put them in advantageous second down and third down situations. But I don't expect the Chiefs running game to change this game very heavily.
I don't think so. Andy Reid is not thinking about his running game. If so, that would be the ultimate pull a rabbit out of his hat. A lot of what they do well in the running game is later in the game, though. They do find those 5-6 yard runs later in the game to put them in position. Like, we need a first down right now. It's 3rd and 2. And you can like do these little crossing routes and little Kelsey plays to get the first downs.
All right. That does it for our show, folks. Oh my God, it's going to be a Super Bowl. It's going to be an awesome game, I hope. Another close one. It really looks like either we are going to see history and Kansas City is going to win 3 straight, or we're going to see history and Philadelphia is going to stop them and Mike gets to go to a parade.
Woo! Because I need more food and drink right now.
Don't forget to check out Mike's Substack, miketanier.substack.com. Don't forget to check out the DVOA preview at ftnfantasy.com, as well as Brian Knoll's gigantic prop bet extravaganza. It's our 21st, I think, prop bet extravaganza, going all the way back to Football Outsiders. So please check that out. And I will be on Blue Sky live from the stadium during the game on Sunday. Mike will be at home watching and giving you his Eagles fan perspective. And hopefully this is a really good one. And we will be back Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern to tell you how it all went and to break it down and get into the offseason. All right, that does it. For Mike Tanier, I'm Aaron Schatz. So long, everybody.